welcome to Season 3, Episode 1 of We're Just Talking About It. We're super excited to kick off Season 3 with our first in-studio guest. Her name is Angie Gad. She was born in the United States but moved to Egypt with her family when she was 16. She describes what it's like being Muslim in Egypt versus the United States. And she talks about her unique upbringing and how it ultimately led her to a career in counterterrorism. She is a Muslim woman currently teaching counterterrorism at a Christian school in the South. We hope you enjoy her perspective and our conversation.
Angie Gad is with us today, and she's traveled a whole hour to come here, but you're our first in-studio guest.
Welcome.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Welcome.
I'm excited to be here. This is awesome.
So we looked at your biography, and we talked through it, and we think we're kind of have you introduce yourself.
Sure.
We'll talk about your career, and then we'll jump into the project you've started.
Oh, sure.
I think that's a pretty good flow to let people know. So how about a quick biography?
Awesome.
What childhood, going to school, where did it take you?
Right. So I grew up in a very, I would say, conservative Muslim Egyptian household. My parents immigrated to the United States in the late 80s and had a pretty interesting upbringing, and it kind of ties into my decision to kind of work in counterterrorism later on and everything. And stayed here until I was about 15. And then, I just started my sophomore year of high school, and my dad was in Egypt. We didn't know why, and he kind of just came. I called me. I was on the bus one morning on my way to school, and he goes, "I just bought a house in Egypt. We're moving to Cairo." I was like, "Oh, okay, cool."
I'm in another country, and we're moving.
And I kind of just remember breaking down in tears because I was leaving all my friends. I'd been there only one time when I was 4, and I don't really remember much.
And where were you living in America at that time?
We were in New Jersey, so my family's still up there, and I was like, "Oh, we're leaving." And my brother and I were like, "What?" So it was kind of interesting. Initially, I remember moving to Egypt. So we ended up staying for 6 years. So I did my high school and my undergrad in college up until my third year of college in Egypt. And I remember the first 4 months, it was very hard transitioning.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
It was pretty hard. Right, but the reason behind my dad making that decision was he was so worried about us going, my brother and I, so it's just myself and my brother, and he's about a year and a half younger than me, and I had just started high school, so I was just started my sophomore year as well, so my dad was getting a little worried about the influences of society here on us as I'm kind of trying to raise us as Muslims in a Western country, and I remember him kind of expressing, and I understood this later on as I got older, but he was very, very concerned as a parent, and he wanted he didn't want to worry about what would happen outside of the household.
Okay.
He wanted to make sure that we were raised in a holistically Muslim, whether that's culturally Muslim or more religiously conservative country, so that all aspects of society are kind of making sure that we are being brought up in a culturally Egyptian society, also a culturally religious society, right? So,
and you were speaking Arabic at home still, so that wasn't a language shock.
No, so my first language was actually Arabic. I didn't know English growing up because I'm the oldest.
Okay.
And I had to take ESL for the first 2 years because my parents were immigrants. They never spoke English at home.
Sure.
Eventually picked up English, obviously. And after that, and after my brother kind of picked up English fluently, my mom made sure, and I applaud her for this, we were never allowed to speak English at home. She said English was only outside the house. We would finish our regular homework at home, and then she'd get out the school books that she'd get brought in from Egypt when we were growing up here. We would read and write Arabic, and we were up to date with whatever grade. If I was in second grade, I was on the second grade level books in Egypt.
Wow, what a lot of extra work, but it pays off. I mean,
there's more
to really keep both languages in there.
Right. And then after that would be Quran memorization and recitation, all that stuff, and interpretation. So it would be like 10 o'clock, and I'd be wiped out. I'd be like, I'm ready to go to sleep. And this kind of kept going until we moved to Egypt, and she kind of started laying back. But now I didn't know just the regular. I picked up. Right, I knew all the Arabic. Now I picked up on all the Egyptian slang, right, with a more informal, kind of colloquial Arabic, and it was great. The first 4 months were hard adjusting culturally to a completely different country. But after a while, I fell in love with everything, and I never wanted to come back to the United States. And I just, right, so growing up there, kind of having some of my my formative years there, it was very easy, I realized, to just be Muslim there. I didn't have to explain to someone why I wasn't eating pork. I didn't have to explain to someone why I wasn't drinking alcohol. I didn't have to explain to someone what Ramadan was and why I don't drink water for 30 days. Well, we do, but after the sun sets, right?
Yeah.
So,
fasting and all,
correct, right? So I realized it was so much easier, and then I was sharing the same language. I was sharing the same kind of familial stories with everyone. So it was so easy for me to just be me there.
Yeah.
And then my dad again decided, we're moving back. So I was like, okay.
Thanks, Dad.
Yeah.
So he brought you to Egypt because
Right.
he wanted to have more of a holistic, Islamic upbringing for you as you became a late adolescent. So at what age did he say, all right, now we're going back? I've got you through this part.
I was 21, and
Okay.
my brother had already done 1 year of college in Egypt, and he decided he didn't want it. He wanted to come back here, finish up his degree in the United States. I had 1 year of undergrad left.
Okay.
And I was kind of like, can you just let me finish my last year?
Yeah, really.
Right. But it was I was the big issue for them because I didn't want to come back. And I was absolutely in love with my life there. And the revolution had just happened, so I took part in 2011. I went down into Tahrir. It was just like such a vibrant time because we left May 2011, and the revolution had kind of ended. Mubarak stepped down in Egypt in February 2011. Yeah. So I was kind of like, oh, this is the next chapter of Egypt. I really wanted to be a part of it and stay and see kind of what would happen. And we just ultimately ended up deciding to come back.
Okay.
And from there, I wrapped up my last year of undergrad, and I started working in the security intelligence analysis in the private sector. Ended up going for my master's degree up in NYU, and got really into the intel field. And for my last year of undergrad, I ended up interning with the New Jersey Office of Homeland Security and Preparedness. And then when I started my last year of grad school, I was wrapping up, and I kind of got a call from them. They told me, hey, we're hiring some analysts, and we'd like you to join us. And that's how I kind of entered. It would be a counterterrorism analyst position, and that's kind of how I entered into that role.
So what were you studying in Egypt when you did your undergrad?
Political science and economics. So I was very much that whole...
You were looking at that world already.
Right, yes. And I kind of had already planned to do my master's focus on international relations and Middle East studies and conflict resolution. And I ended up falling on this course, intelligence, and the professor is from the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, so the ODNI. So I had an amazing instructor. Great. And I fell in love with the field, and I had already interned with Homeland Security as an analyst with them before, so I really loved I had two very good experiences with my professor and with that internship, and that really set me up for going back into that field, and I fell in love with it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And so now you're teaching it.
Now I'm teaching it, right? So it's great. I'm teaching them kind of introduction to Homeland Security, intelligence analysis, which was what I did, and I'm teaching them intelligence and national security, and some kind of briefing for government and all that stuff. So it's been a learning experience for myself as well. Just different demographic down here. I'm there. For most of my students, I'm the first Muslim Arab they've ever met. It's a private Christian university, so it's also kind of introducing Islam to some of the students on the side of the regular coursework, right? So
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
So you, I'm trying to figure out how to put this. So your dad takes you to Egypt,
right?
And you discussed it. It made it a little bit easier because everybody understood all the normal things of your culture. You didn't have to explain it. What I've been seeing in the paper after the last few days, it's just been driving me nuts. People keep writing all these op-eds, and they're sharing them globally, of course, about how America is anti-Muslim. It's just, one of them was called, it's set against Islam. It's just against Muslims. How did you feel growing up in New Jersey as a Muslim? Did you feel like the world was against you? Because you kind of mentioned it was more comfortable in Egypt, or it was just different?
No, so maybe I should describe it better. I felt more comfortable, and I didn't have to explain everything to everyone. But growing up here, I always tell people and my students this, Muslims in America have it so much better here than we do, or than Muslims do in Europe, for instance. I believe, from kind of what I've studied and what I've read and the people I know, I've never had an issue being a Muslim here. I'm also visibly not Muslim, so I've never had to encounter anything or any kind of hate crime or attack targeting me or my family. But I've never had an issue being a Muslim here.
Yeah.
And an example of that has just been working at being the only Muslim in my agency, and everyone, right? I've never had any issue. I've never had anyone treat me with a problem. Everyone knew that I was a practicing Muslim, and if anything, I kind of became that go-to person to describe everything to them, especially in the counterterrorism field. I think it was important to have a Muslim explain the nuances of Islam and the Arab culture in the Middle East, etc. But the issues I faced here, growing up as a Muslim, were more familial, not because of anything to do with America per se. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, exactly.
When we talk about like assimilation and the role it plays and whose responsibility is it, And so I wonder if it just sounds like it is a lot of work for both Americans and Muslims to make, because you're saying it was so easy in Egypt because I didn't have to explain anything. You'd have to do a lot of explaining to people here. And so maybe that's also why people don't. Why they're just like, wow, that's a long road ahead and we're just not going to go down it, And so I think that's what we have to get ready for. This is going to be a lot of work. We're going to have to ask a lot of questions. We're going to have to be patient. There's just a lot that goes into trying to understand it all.
Absolutely. For those who can't see me, I'm aggressively nodding my head. But you're right. And I've gotten to the point in my life now where I take on this position and this role. I'm very happy to take on that position to represent my community and to represent Islam to all my friends who are non-Muslim. And when they ask me, how come, you spend 16 hours a day not drinking in the summer? Are you guys, what's going on with that, right? So, and I know happily explain it. And I think, so for my husband and I, we like to take on that role where we can provide that explanation as opposed to people going somewhere else or having a misconception about Islam.
Yeah.
And for instance, my students will ask me, hey, by the way, why can't you eat pork or why can't you drink alcohol? And I explain to them the logical reasons behind why in Islam it's prohibited to do X, Y, Z. And I think I figured this out early on, right after 9/11. I was younger then, but that I have to understand my religion very, very well to be able to explain it to everyone else, because I realized that people, I remember a couple days after 9/11, I had a student with me, one of my classmates, came to me, you're Muslim, right? And then we kind of got it, and we were very young, so I don't blame him for the way he kind of addressed this topic, but he's like, so you're just like the terrorist. And I had to kind of, and then I think that was a very big turning point in my life, because I realized I never learned about terrorists. I don't know what a right? It didn't, those things did not click in my head.
Yeah. And
then I realized I'm going to have to continue to defend the religion or explain the nuances so that people can understand it better.
Yeah.
And that, that change in
it
a second.
Instant,
right.
Yeah.
And you're like, I've never had to defend myself or my religion before, and now here we go.
Yeah, exactly. And I was very young. I mean, obviously I didn't take on that role right away, but I realized, I think that's, looking back, that's when it kind of occurred to me that this is going to be something I'm going to have to start working. And I do it, it's not an obligation, it's something that I love to do, so.
Right.
I think that's a really good thing for people to understand. Why people are out now, why are so many different folks trying to get people to talk about religion? Because we just don't. There has to be that moment. Why do I find myself out, talking around America? I'm not defending Islam, but I'm literally taking the questions that people are afraid to ask Muslims, or, as I tell a lot of people, most Americans have never met someone who's Muslim, and they never will. At less than 3% of the population in a country this large, that's just what it is.
Right.
That's not going to change.
Right. And then even if you do, are you going to ask those burning questions? So the time is not on our side. The availability is not on our side. So you're like, how do we have this conversation otherwise? And I like what you said, that like it might be a lot of questions and people might ask weird things, but I want to be the educator. I want to make sure that the right information about Islam is getting out there, which I think is huge, and we need a lot more people like that.
Right.
That kind of stuff.
I remember a couple of my students had a couple questions about it, and I remembered I told them, okay, next class we'll dedicate the first half hour. Ask whatever you want to ask. And they kind of, and I was like, don't worry, I have very thick skin, just go ahead. And they go, well, how come you're not veiled? Or how come some people are veiled and how some people... And I walked them through all of that. And it's very refreshing. And I think a lot of people are afraid of asking certain questions so that they don't offend me. And I have to really lay that out for them, tell them, do not worry, just be honest, or ask whatever you genuinely want to ask. In my old job, when I was with Homeland Security, one of a very, very dear friend of mine who recently passed away, he was he was older, he was suffering from cancer, he just passed away a week ago, and...
Sorry.
Oh, okay, thank you. He was a devout Christian, served in Vietnam, and we were from two very different worlds, right? I was younger Arab, Muslim, the child of immigrants, and he was a army vet, devout Christian, white, and it really had only one Egyptian friend that he knew from the military, because there's a lot of relationship between the Egyptian military and the U.S. military. So he knew him, but I don't think he really dug deep into Islam that much. And one of my responsibilities was I was in charge of the chemical sector, and he was in charge of the chemical sector from the preparedness side. I was in charge of it from the terrorism angle, and we had to work together. And we had this long drive to Virginia one day for a conference. And he's like, all right, let's get in the car. Tell me about this Islam thing.
I was like, a long drive.
I was like, okay,
Islam thing. Yeah.
And he was like, so what do you think about Jesus? I was like, we love Jesus. And he goes, what? Right? And it was just kind of like light bulb after light bulb after light bulb. And I was like, Jesus is mentioned in the Quran more than Muhammad. What? Mary has a chapter just for herself in the Quran, and there's no other woman mentioned by name other than Mary. Right? And I kind of started, right? And he was like, so we really don't disagree on much. I was like, not really. And once I start having this conversation, you see the light bulb go off, and you see people kind of like, oh, well, okay, now I understand a little bit better. And very funny, his son-in-law was someone who had never met a Muslim before. Yep. And and I don't blame him for this, he genuinely thought all Muslims were terrorists. That's just something that he'd never been exposed to a Muslim. He's kind of, and Dennis explained this to me, that they live in a very kind of Christian bubble. And I told him, all right, bring him over to dinner one day. And we brought him over to our house, my parents' house, for dinner, and we made this huge Arab feast. I'm sure you guys have been exposed to that. And we won him over by our food. No, but we...
You've said that. You're like, you can solve anything over a table and some food. Yeah.
Exactly. And he kind of just started asking questions, and we answered, and I think he ended up leaving saying, these are some of the nicest people I ever met. And I made this joke. I wish I could just get like a tour bus and do dinner with a Muslim tour around the country. I would love to do that.
Yeah.
Because I just saw it, just like you said, I see this all the time. It's exposure. We're about 1% of the population here, and most people haven't met Muslims. And I feel like when people meet me, like, oh, you're not so bad. I'm like, oh, geez.
Right.
Thanks.
Well, thanks.
Exactly, but it's just, you reduce fear by exposure.
You do.
Right? And it's the same thing I teach about white supremacy, and once white supremacists are exposed to the other, you start seeing that ideology kind of strip away a little bit, right? So
that is on target. I went through very much the same process in the opposite way. I went to Afghanistan, after having spent some time in UAE and really having a lot of questions about Islam. And next time I really spent a lot of time with Muslims. I lived there for a year, and my translator and I were together 16, 18 hours a day, every day of the year. I mean, we were like that long car ride every day. So we just talked. But I learned a lot more about Christianity because I had to read my Bible. Some of the questions he was asking, I was like, hold on, I got this, but I don't have that memorized. I got to check.
Right.
So you do get, you just learn more about all religions, and then it's just exposure. And I basically, the same thing you just talked about. And that's what I do when I do my talks. It's not actually, half of it's about Islam. The other part's about telling people, well, you do know these characters, right? These are all the Old Testament characters you all grew up on. Like, you've read most of the Quran. You just don't know it yet.
Right.
Because
it's all there. Yeah.
It's a really an interreligious discussion. Right. People just don't know it until they get into it.
That that is where we'll wrap it up with Angie today, but stick with us. In our next episode, Angie talks about working for Homeland Security and how her job was to read through ISIS propaganda every day. It was what she uncovered that had her start her own project called the MyIslam Project. As always, thank you for listening. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram at We're Just Talking About It, and you can email us at wjtanc@gmail.com.